Hello everyone. I have been gone for the last few weeks. Hopefully I will be able to consistently make videos now. I've been getting a house ready to sell, getting plans to build a house, and the last week I was at a camp, training, doing some leadership training. Actually I was in charge of cooking for about 50 adults, and while I was up there, I saw a bear when I was out running. And, the bear, it was kind of an interesting situation, and it does tie into today's theme, and so just bear with me with this story for a minute. But I was running up on this hill, and I stopped, and I went off this trail a little bit. And I was just sitting there. It was about 5:30 on a Sunday morning, and I hear this rustling in the bushes. I look over, and there is this great big black bear. Now, the problem was the black bear was blocking the trail, and I was up in the bush off the trail. I had gone up a little bit to see if there was a trail up and over the horizon, because I kind of wanted to see what was over on the other side of the mountain. But all there was a bunch of brush and scrub oak, and I didn't want to go through it and forge a new trail. And so I kind of just decided to sit and observe nature for a minute. And then I turned around and I saw a big black bear. Now, bears, for the most part, are pretty skittish and scared creatures. However, if they decide to be aggressive, or if they feel threatened and are protective, they can kill you pretty quickly. And it was a pretty good size black bear. So I was in a predicament at that point, and I had to decide what to do. And with bears generally, you are supposed to look ferocious and dominant. So you're supposed to grab a tree or make lots of noise, and for the most part, they will run away if you do that. But I hadn't brought a cell phone, and normally I run in the mountains with pepper spray. I hadn't brought pepper spray to this camp. So I was really by myself in an area where I couldn't have really called for help. And so I sat for a minute and actually was fairly calm. I have kind of a natural ability, I guess probably through some of my training, through working with emergency response and just having to be a medical professional and provider. I've learned, I've kind of trained myself how to stay calm in an emergency, and I kind of naturally go to this calm state, and it's almost like a delayed response, and I feel the adrenaline rush and fear later when I think back about what could have happened. So, but I was calm, and I sat there for a minute, and I also believe in animal medicine, and a bear can also be a sign of protection. And so for me, from my spirituality frame point, I kind of took it that way. But at that moment, I had to decide what to do. I had to make a choice. I could either sit there. The problem with sitting there is the bear would have kept running or walking the right direction and closed me in, and I was only about 50 yards maybe, and I didn't want to give it any more space. The other problem was it was blocking the really only pathway out that I could have gotten through fast, and because of all the brush around. So I decided I didn't want the bear to get any closer to me. I had to get its attention and do something while I still had some space and still had some room to get out. So what I did is I sat in my head and I said, how am I going to get out of this situation? The bear is right there. He's coming closer. If I sit here and do nothing, I'm going to put myself in a situation where if the bear decides to be aggressive, or if the bear feels threatened because it's too close to me, then it really has the advantage if it decides to attack. So I kind of looked, and I saw if I veered a little bit at an angle down on it was kind of a non-trail down the mountain, if by getting the bear's attention, it started to charge at me, I could run down this hill and make kind of like an L and go back and probably call for help and get help or be close enough to where somebody could hear me back at camp. And this was my plan. So I stood up, and of course when I stood up, the bear immediately saw me. The bear made eye contact with me, and it just sat there like what it was wondering what I was going to do next. So I took one step toward the bear, and by taking a step toward the bear and appearing dominant, the bear retreated a couple steps. When I saw that it was scared of me and not likely to attack me, I started running towards it, and the bear took off very fast. So how does this relate to eating disorders and what we're talking about? What we're talking about today is crash diets, fad diets, the diet industry, and triggers. And I'm kind of likening the bear to being in a position where you're caught off guard and there's a danger. The bear could have been real danger, but I had to assert myself and be dominant. And it's very similar to what you have to do in order to recover and to survive being triggered when fad diets, crash diets, and being presented by this kind of paraphernalia when you're in recovery is triggering to many people. It's very easy to get sucked back in if you don't remain the dominant one and give that diet or that material dominancy. You might be tempted, or you might have fear, or you might be triggered by seeing it. But just as I could not have prevented seeing the bear, I mean, granted, I could have not gone up there by myself. I could have done things to prepare better by bringing pepper spray in bear country, by maybe bringing a cell phone. There are things that I could have done, and just like you can avoid those situations. You can think through things before you, so that you know that, okay, if I am triggered, if I see something, what am I going to do? However, more than likely, there will be a time when you're going to be presented with a case where you're just caught off guard, and you see these things and you're tempted to go into it and maybe even start in it, and how are you going to get out of it? So you have to be the one who is dominant and who practices over and over again, whether that be going to a friend, coming up with a plan B, just as I had to come up with a secondary path, like what if the bear attacks, how am I going to get out of here, because that's the main path out. What's your plan B? So come up with a plan B, and always remember you have the power, even if you get triggered, even if you have a slight slip up or relapse, that you have the power to stop, think things through, and come up with a plan to get out of it. When you stop, when you give up, is when it's a danger. Had I just sat there, even though I forgot my pepper spray, didn't have a cell phone, had I just sat there and let the bear gain more distance on me, eventually the bear would have been right in my face, and at that point I would have been more in danger. So if you stop and allow that to crowd in on your space, even if you're triggered, even if you've started on that path, come up with a plan B, and don't just let that crash diet come towards you, or whatever it is that triggers you when you see that. Come up with a plan B. Planning and thinking through situations is good practice, and the more you do it, the more successful you are going to be with eventually being able to be fully recovered. And I truly believe that you can eventually become fully recovered if you stay on the path. I am fully recovered. Everybody has their own timeline. Everybody has different underlying issues that brought them to their eating disorder. It may be a long time for some people. It may be a short time for other people. But if you continue to stay on the path, eventually you will come to a place where you are recovered. And whether that be 10 years, 20 years, 2 years, 1 year, you stay on the path and stay the course. And that is my advice for you for this week.